Hey guys, welcome to another Worlds interview. So my name is Alan, and I've had the honor and privilege of interviewing Nick Dimitrov, one of the original co-founders of Amazon Games, what is formerly known as Amazon Game Studios. Nick's time spent in Amazon was instrumental in laying the groundwork for much of what Amazon Games is today. I've been corresponding with Nick on LinkedIn for the past few months on matters concerning Worlds, showing him the progress that our team has made and discussing some of the future tasks and some of the goals that we have set forth for ourselves. So Nick has been kind enough to offer the sort of scrutiny, not only on strategic matters, but also for business and a few tips along the way as well. In addition, we've been chatting about some of the differences and similarities between traditional and Web3 games, and what the future of the industry might hold for both seasoned gamers and laymen alike. As such, we've decided to let you guys in on the conversation by doing a terse interview together. Nick, how are you?
Alan, I'm good. How are you?
Great. It's an honor to have you on Worlds. How have you been?
I've been very well. Thank you. Look forward to our chat.
Yeah, of course. So let's jump right into it. Nick, looking back at the past 20 years or so, can you tell me a little bit about your background as it relates specifically to the gaming industry?
Of course. Yes. Again, thanks for having me here. I've been in games for a while. My entire corporate career has been linked with the game space. I joined the original Xbox team at Microsoft in 2000. So that was before Xbox, the first Xbox was launched. I would have called it Xbox One, but I can't do that anymore. In 2001. And I was a planner for Microsoft. And Microsoft used to call those roles planning roles. And they're kind of a mix between a producer and product manager on the one hand, and a business development person on the other. So I started pretty much as an individual contributor person, and then climbed my way up the ladder and kind of ran the whole planning team at Microsoft for a while. So effectively, if you can think of any first party or second party internal Microsoft game, it's gone through my hands or the hands of my teams. And, you know, some of those games include obviously things like Gears of War and Forza and Gotham and so on and so forth. They go on and on and on. And then in 2007, while still at Microsoft, I joined 343 Industries. That's the internal studio that picked up the ownership of Halo once Bungie left Microsoft in 2007. And that was a lot of fun, you know, building Halo 4. And then in 2013, I joined Amazon, pretty much sight unseen. They were a very secretive company then. They remain a very secretive company now. They invited me to join. I did join, and it turned out that I was one of a handful of people who started Amazon Game Studios, and those were wonderful days. And you fast forward to, you know, later when Amazon acquired Twitch for more than $1 billion, and now they have internal games, and they have an engine, and so on and so forth. So I've always loved games my entire life. And then in 2018, I left Amazon to start my own business. So here we are talking today.
Awesome. Yeah, and what a journey must have that been, right? So Nick, based on the PR and sort of op-eds that I've read around you initiating sort of the genesis of Amazon Game Studios is quite interesting. What pushed you to encourage Jeff Bezos into letting you sort of spearhead that part of Amazon with you and the other co-founders that started Amazon, which was originally called Amazon Game Studios, but recently they've switched their name to Amazon Games?
Correct. Yes, I was. I mean, Amazon has always tinkered with games, and when they hired me in 2013, they were really kind of hell-bent on figuring out how to crack the space. And I was one of 4 people who months upon end worked with the senior leadership team at Amazon and Bezos to get the game initiative going. And to answer your question, the rationale there was that the customer, the Amazon customer, spend the most amount of their time, attention, and money on games as they were interacting with the Amazon ecosystem of experiences. So at the time, Amazon only had the Fire tablets. And surprise, surprise, what people spend up the most on these tablets was not even reading books, which Amazon found shocking, but playing games.
Right.
So Amazon wanted to figure out a way how to compel these customers to continue consuming games, and to also for games to serve as a tiebreaker when customers would consider a device such as an iPad or a Samsung tablet or an Amazon tablet. So Amazon kind of had that general intent of games are important and we need to get going with games, but they didn't quite know how to get that done, right? So we've considered a ton of different options, right? We convinced Bezos and the senior leadership team to invest in Amazon Games, as you said. That's a collection of first-party and second-party studios. Instead of, for example, pay for third-party exclusives or partner with the studio or acquire studio or a number of other options.
Yeah, and that makes sense. Yeah, and you're correct. They do obviously have an ecosystem. They have sort of media rights and media licensing agreements that they can parlay from their sort of shows and movies over into games as well, and that makes sense, killing essentially two birds with one stone. So yeah, of course, that all makes sense. So let me ask you this, Nick: are you yourself a gamer? And moreover, are you currently playing any Web3 games?
Yes, I obviously you can't stay in the game space without being a gamer. So I am
Naturally.
definitely a gamer. My gaming habits have changed quite a bit. I used to be a core gamer, and my favorite game of all time used to be BioShock. The very first BioShock, I cried when I finished that game. It's just an amazing poetic game. But now, I have a 7-year-old boy, and I find myself playing Switch almost exclusively. So how my gaming has evolved. And then in terms of Web3 games, yeah, absolutely. I used to play Axie a bunch, back in May of 2021 when it was taking the world by storm. And recently I've been playing Revenge. It's a zombie shooter game by Elixir. It launched, I think, earlier in April. And it's fun. Yeah, I mean, it's encouraging to see the evolution of Web3 gaming into more of a into a direction of creativity and focus on gameplay. I'm a big fan of that.
Yeah, of course. And yeah, I don't necessarily disagree. So Nick, let's chat a little bit about perhaps some of the differences and perhaps some of the similarities that maybe you've picked up over the past, obviously your tenure at Amazon, with Bungie, with Microsoft. And so what are the sort of similarities and differences between these the Web3 gaming industry subset?
Right. So before I jump into trying to give an answer, let me provide some context. I view Web3 gaming not as like a standalone genre that's gonna in effect be side by side with console gaming or PC gaming or mobile. I view Web3 gaming as something that's going to permeate all game content and media, very similar to what we're seeing with AI today, permeating all kinds of business and consumer initiatives. So with that kind of had in mind, trying to answer your question, I'll start with the similarities, and I'll open the curtain a bit of behind the game making process, where back in Amazon in 2013 and shortly thereafter, when we started Amazon Game Studios, one of our biggest selling points when we'd go to these independent studios and convince them to work with us instead of a bunch of other established publishers, one of our biggest sales points was whatever we build together with you folks, it's going to be your property. You're going to continue to own the IP. And that was pretty unheard of. I mean, it sounds somewhat prosaic these days, but back in those days, like more than 10 years ago, that was kind of shocking. And we'd go to these development studios and we'd say, the game that you've always wanted to build. You want the game you come out of bed every morning, the one that you've always wanted to build. Let's build that game with you. Let's not build a sequel or something that monetizes users that a bunch of other publishers might want you to make. Let's build this one game that you've always wanted to create together. And guess what? We're gonna finance it. We're gonna build it with you, and you're gonna get to own the IP. And so that when we fast forward to today, that obviously is one of the edicts of Web3 gaming, where you own your game, not just as a creator, but also as a gamer. Now, obviously, in 2013, we couldn't do that, so we had to come up with these approximations of trying to get there. So that those are some of the similarities, and the differences are obvious. Risking being Captain Obvious here. Obviously, Web3 has a decentralized way of gaming, unprecedented player ownership, so on and so forth. Even if you recall the famous story of why Vitalik Buterin started Ethereum,
Right.
how Wizard nerfed his Warlock in 2010, and lo and behold, he was so upset that 5 years later Ethereum launches. So it's one of those awesome stories that shows you the promise of Web3 games, and that's why I think they're going to merge with the what we call traditional gaming today, because they offer so much to gamers.
Of course. Yeah, definitely agree. So Nick, do you think, and of course, we're not holding anybody to anything, but and we can't tell the future, but do you think the Web3 gaming industry is headed in sort of an adequate direction overall?
Yeah, I would hope so. As I mentioned earlier in our conversation, I'm excited to see a game like Revenge, for example, and many others, show up in the Web3 realm. I'm a sucker for creativity and storytelling and action, and you definitely have not seen that enough in the Web3 space yet.
Agreed.
And that's okay, right? I mean, whenever something starts, initially, which is still what we can, say for the Web3 space, it's still, day one, it's still early days for Web3. There often is no direction. Often there's a lot of kind of shiny toys and gimmicks that people tend to chase after. And if anything, I've been somewhat, underwhelmed to see all the, the emphasis on that, and the lack of, to a large extent, creative and fun gameplay in the space. Answering one of the earlier questions you asked about the differences between Web2 and Web3, or traditional games and Web3 games, is I think traditional games still own the domain for creativity, right? You don't have amazing, iconic properties like Mario or Halo or BioShock on Web3 yet. But it's good to see that starting to change. And I'm just thrilled to see that the focus on mechanics and just, gimmicks and all those things that I think are secondary to gameplay and creativity, I think that's beginning to wane now. And the real builders are stepping forth and starting to create more relevant and more fun content.
I agree. And I think, to second that, I think that, as you've mentioned, I think the Web3 gaming space has faltered a little bit, especially in the realm of gameplay, as you sort of allude to. And yeah, I think if that gets ironed out over time, and if sort of the top creatives, begin to sort of merge, and the sort of the Web2 and Web3 begin to sort of blur the division lines between the two, I think that we might have something decent on our hands going forward. And so Nick, if hypothetical, if you were to start a Web3 game studio today, what type of genre would you pursue? And furthermore, what would be your ultimate focus of that Web3 game? Of course, we want every game to be the best that it can, but what would you specifically focus on? What would it be? The tokenomics? Would it be the gameplay? Would it be the lore of the game? Please.
Yeah, for sure. No, it's a great question. So full disclosure, my business doesn't have to do with gaming. if I were to build a gaming studio, I've always wondered, what that would look like. And I think the very first, let me start answering your question from the broader perspective and then go a little bit more deeply into the specifics. But when you do something like this, you have to, at the end of the day, have to go where your customers are, right? And you cannot be oblivious to the, to the pragmatic truth of who plays these games and who has access to Web3 as of today. And in my view, and also based on a lot of the data that we see out there, the core gamers are the very first consumers of Web3 games, right? And if you just take a look at some publicly available numbers out there, for example, there's about 15 million active Ethereum wallets. And when you compare that to, for example, a mainstream mobile casual game like Candy Crush that has a little bit less than a 250 million MAUs, you see that maybe if you were to go after more of the casual, more of the puzzle, more of the kind of children broad appealing type of genres, those might not be yet a natural fit for Web3. So just based on, you got to fish where the fishes are, and you got to delight where your customers, whoever they are. I would consider building something for the core gamer, and then the next step down in that ladder of specificity, what type of genre. I think that's you got to find people who are passionate for whatever it is you're building. So whatever, if you want to build a shooter, then find the best shooter teams out there. And hire them on your team, right? And build something, as I keep using the analogy from earlier today, just the game that you've always wanted to make. I personally am more compelled by story and character development. That's why RPGs, BioShock, things like Fable, those are the types of games that I would go for. But in addition to following my passion, I would couple it with trying to be as pragmatic as possible and go after customers with Ethereum wallets, or customers who have the propensity to want to consider to become Web3 gamers, right? And I think when you combine those two, your passion on the one hand with the realities in the world, and that can provide a winning combination. And then to take the question a step further, I think Web3, given that it's still in its nascency, Web3 gaming, I think is in a wonderful position to birth a gaming IP and a game that maybe the world hasn't seen yet, right? Very similar to what the original Xbox did for Halo, right? Halo made the Xbox, but Xbox also made Halo, right? I mean, imagine what would have happened if Halo launched on the iPhone like a few years later, right? I mean, and be overcrowded by all these other properties in an overcrowded marketplace, right? You want this captive audience, and you want this almost like king-making type of Web3 world to anoint, this hero game that's going to put it on its back and delight gamers with it. So I think it's a very unique opportunity that a lot of Web3 studios should consider.
Yeah, definitely agree, Nick. And so Nick, before we wrap up our interview here, what if some of our viewership, if some of our audience at Worlds wants to find you, talk to you, perhaps hire you as a consult to help them onboard additional employees, where can they find you these days?
Oh yeah, thank you. Thanks for asking this. I'd love to talk to people about games, and one of the more reliable ways to get a hold of me is find me on Twitter. I'm at Nick Dimitrov on Twitter, and I would love to talk to. Doesn't need to be a consulting opportunity, but I'd love to talk to people who love games, and I'm rooting for everyone at Worlds, and I look forward to what you guys are gonna build in the future. And I'm a big believer in Web3. I run my own Ethereum validator, a number of them, and that's self-hosted. So I live this space, I live this technology, and I look forward to what the future brings for all of us.
Great, Nick. Thank you. So yeah, Nick, thanks again for the discussion, and I hope to chat with you again soon.
Thank you, Alan. Best of luck. Bye-bye.
Later. Bye.